I remember that night I launched Facebook from that little dorm in Kirkland House. I went to Noakes with my friend KX, and I remember telling him clearly that I was excited to help connect the Harvard community, but one day someone would connect the whole world. The thing is, it never even occurred to me that that someone might be us. We were just college kids. We didn't know anything about that. There were all these great big technology companies with all these resources, and I just assumed one of them would do it. But this idea was so clear to us that all people want to connect. So we just kept working on it.
So as Zuckerberg said, social media truly does connect the entire world. You know, whether it be sharing photos or videos on Instagram with friends and family, or going on Twitter and letting people know what you're up to, or weighing in on a digital debate. Social media truly allows people to easily stay updated on what is happening in their communities and around the world. Social media can also do a number of things in aiding different movements to kind of like have people come together and create one big community for a specific goal in mind. They can also aid in education, and yeah, it's just that connectivity that infinite connectivity is something that has truly transformed the world in the way that people think on a daily basis. Even though that this, connectivity that allows us to do so much is helpful in so many ways, there are things that negatively affect it in our lives. Will our almost dependence on social media and technology affect the way that humans live their lives in the future? Those types of questions we're going to kind of look at in this video. Specifically, does the use of social media affect social skills and different social interactions? So to kind of kick off this discussion about if the use of social media affects social skills, we're going to first talk about screen time and how much time we're spending on our devices and what we're doing when we're going on our devices. So, on average, a teen is on their devices for 9 hours a day. Children 8 to 10 are 5+ hours a day, and adults are over 11 hours a day. Now, this might sound crazy at first, but this is across all devices. So this is your phone, this is using your computer, watching TV, that type of stuff. And and so also on average, a normal average mobile phone user picks up their phone about 150 times a day, which again sounds kind of crazy, but I went over and looked at my screen time, which you can see on your iPhone to have it in settings, and my screen time just on my phone alone is 4 hours and 3 minutes every day. And I don't consider myself someone that goes on their phone very often during the day. Like I'd say compared to other people, I'm probably on my phone less, at least people my age, but I'm still on for 4 hours a day. You can see that over this week I've spent 7 hours and 10 minutes on Instagram, just endlessly scrolling, and I've spent 5 hours and 31 minutes watching YouTube just on my phone alone. So there's probably another couple hours of me watching YouTube videos on my laptop or other devices. And then if you go over to the right, you can see that I pick up my phone about 150 times a day, which is kind of right there with that daily average that I was kind of talking about, that statistically speaking was the case. And you can see there too, it kind of says the first apps I usually open when I pick up my phone, and majority of the time it's either Instagram or text messages. But and then also I wanted to include notifications. I don't consider myself someone that's really using their phone a ton, so I only get about 200 notifications a day, which I think is probably relatively low. I get like about 50 texts, I get about 50 Bleacher Report / ESPN kind of notifications about stuff that's going on in sports, and I get a few emails every day. But yeah, so when you kind of look at the statistics, you're kind of like, well, there's no way, I don't feel like I do that. But then you kind of delve into the actual like you look at your actual information, you're like, wow, I fit right into this too. So I wanted to include this too. This is a screenshot of my screen time from freshman year I found on my phone. And I just thought it was interesting how my screen time has increased since this point. So back in the day, my screen time was under 4 hours, and now, as you can see, I'm slightly over 4 hours. And you can see here too, a lot of my screen time is coming from playing games on my phone. I was playing probably about 45 minutes to an hour of Mario Kart on my phone a day. So my screen time has increased significantly since this point if you take that out of it, because you saw how much I was using Instagram and YouTube, where back in the day I wasn't using it as much. So I thought it was interesting to include this and see the difference over time. So this is a study I found. It was done by an unknown researcher at Elon University, and it was basically looking into people's interactions with technology, what they'd rather use to communicate with people, and kind of when they're just living their lives, what are they doing? So out of 100 students that were surveyed for the first part of the experiment, the question was basically, would you rather, or do you communicate with friends and family more through technology or more in person? And you can see 46% said they communicate more through technology, where 26% said that that's in person. Now you can think about it, that might be, these kids are in college, so talking to family, most likely they probably don't, the family doesn't probably live like right on campus, so most of the communication with their family would probably be through technology. But it's just crazy to think that this was also in 2015, so this was 6 years ago. So I'm assuming it's probably gone up at least by a little bit at this point. But I just thought it was interesting. They also did an experiment, basically observing people living their normal lives. So like people eating lunch, people spending time with friends, people just walking around campus. So out of those, there's 134 students that were alone that they were kind of looking at for this experiment. Out of those 134 students, 58% were either texting or holding their phones. 16% were talking on the phone or wearing earbuds or headphones, and 26% were not using technology at all. So again, that just kind of, it's a cool thing. Again, these kids are in college, so most college kids, if they're walking around alone, they'll have earbuds in or be listening to music just to kind of, have something to kind of pass the time while you're walking to class or walking around campus with no one with you. They also did 100 students that were with others, that were kind of with friends, and 62% of them were using technology. And there were some of those were in the dining hall, and 73% of the people that were with others in the dining hall were using technology. And that's something that I can 100% understand, because back in freshman year when I was on a dining plan going to the Hans every day, you'd see basically almost everyone would be sitting alone. Everyone would be at one table by themselves, one person to a table, and they'd have headphones in, they'd be using their laptop, using their phone and eating. Very rarely did you see people actually sitting together and eating like with another person. Even if like you did see a group of people eating together, 9 times out of 10 they'd probably at least have their kind of phone like on the table or like actively using it, even if they're kind of having a conversation with someone else. So I just thought that was interesting as well, and that's something that I can definitely understand and relate to what happens here at Drexel. So this experiment kind of gave me inspiration to interview some of my friends and family members, asking them some questions about their social media usage, as well as kind of social interaction preferences. So the question I asked them was, would you rather talk to someone in person or using social media?
So I would rather have a conversation with my friends in person, but if I can't see them, I'll text or FaceTime them. But if it's someone I don't know as well, I'll either text them or call them.
I would much rather engage in a conversation in person with someone I'm comfortable with and I know well, like a friend or a family member. I just feel like it would be easier to talk to them in person because I know them well and it wouldn't be awkward. But I'd rather engage in a conversation in social media with someone I don't know as well and someone I'm like getting to know more, because it could get a little awkward in person.
If it really depends on the person. If it's somebody that if it's somebody I haven't seen in like a super long time, it's like, especially I wasn't really that close with to begin with, like probably social media, because you don't have that awkward like figure out what small talk to make. You can just kind of take your time and think of questions. But if it's one of my friends, obviously I'd rather see them in person. It's always a good time. So as you can see, one thing that basically all three of the people had in common was that
if it's someone they're close to, a friend, a family member, someone that they are comfortable talking to, they'd much rather interact in person with that person. But if it's someone they maybe don't know as well, or conversation might be tough to have, they all agreed that it might be better to have it through social media, because that gives you the ability to kind of think about what you're going to say to them, think about your answers to them, and also, as a couple people said, it relieves the awkwardness. You don't have to be sitting there face to face with someone. You don't have to have that 5 to 10 second moment of awkward silence where you're both kind of looking at each other like, what do I say next? What do we do? What am I supposed to do here? So that kind of has something to do with what I'm calling the avoidance strategy, and basically has to do with dependence on our devices. So, obviously, kind of as time has gone on, technology and social media has almost become the primary source of communication for a lot of people, especially through the pandemic. But so that's kind of the main way we talk to people. And so that kind of makes that's almost adapted us to be kind of almost scared of facial confrontation. I'm not saying an angry confrontation. I'm just saying having a simple face-to-face conversation. We kind of use our phones and using social media as a way to kind of avoid this. And I mean this in two ways. So obviously the first way is kind of what they were saying. If you're talking to someone through social media, it allows you to think through what you're going to say, think through a response to them. You have much more time to think about and articulate what you want to say and what you want to ask them. Where in person, obviously, you got to think on your feet. You can't sit there for a minute or so to kind of think about what you want to say next. It's kind of quick fire, right from the top of the head. And I also mean this in a way that I don't know if you'll relate to this necessarily, but I know that a lot of college students and just younger people will. When you're kind of walking around somewhere, or you're sitting in a public area, waiting for your food, maybe at a food truck, or just walking around campus, and you see someone that maybe you don't necessarily, maybe you vaguely know, but you don't really want to talk to, you just kind of pull out your phone out of your pocket and just start kind of looking at it to make it look like you're doing something, make you look busy. Same thing with you're waiting for food. You don't want to have the awkwardness of just kind of sitting there staring right at the person in the truck making your food. You just pull out your phone and just start looking at it for really no reason. Like I said, I'm calling this the avoidance strategy. And I put together a little skit of with some of my friends, basically trying to kind of show this point. So here's the skit.
Oh man, that's Tom. I think we have a class together. Oh man, I'm gonna go over and say hi. It's a big PJ from my fucking engineering class. I gotta pretend like I don't see him. Hey, yo, Dom, what's going on, pal?
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, what was so important on Dom's phone that he couldn't even say hi to someone, an impromptu social interaction? He was just scrolling around, making it look like he was doing something, not even looking at anything, just literally moving his buttons around. And it sounds stupid, but this is a thing that people do. I've seen TikToks of it online of the same thing. It's something that people do. It sounds crazy, and it sounds something so simple, literally just having a conversation with someone, maybe 2 minutes tops, without preparation or without you being able to hide behind your phone, and it just, we crumble. All right, to kind of continue on the path of how social media kind of negatively affects different types of social skills and social interactions, we're going to talk about kind of conversation cues that you only really get in person. And so these types of cues I'm talking about are facial expressions, eye contact, tone of voice, body position, posture, that type of stuff. You don't get these. You don't get to see these things when you're talking to someone over the phone or through social media. And these things are really important in being able to hold a in-person conversation with someone, because it allows you to kind of read the conversation, read how it's going, read what the mood is of it, and kind of adjust your conversation accordingly. So it's very important. I touched on in a couple of my reflections. A lot of times through digital communication, sometimes things can get lost in translation. They can you can say one thing, and when you read it, it sounds like in maybe a happy way, but when someone else reads it, it sounds like you're kind of upset. That type of thing. without these kind of natural cues that happen in person, we kind of lose. We can't have the same interaction. It's more difficult to have the same interaction, and even since we're not having these conversations in person, some of the younger kids and growing up are struggling to even pick up on these cues because they've never had experience with them, because they've just been they've been growing up on their phones, you know. So social media is causing a decrease in this ability for people to kind of pick up on these nonverbal social cues. So that's definitely kind of a downside that social media is kind of causing. So another downside that social media is possibly causing, and I know that we touched on this during your first class, was attention span. Part of having good social skills is being able to pay attention, being able to listen to someone, being able to listen to them talk and hear what they're saying. And as you kind of mentioned on the first day of class, our attention span is just plummeting down, and social media and technology is a huge part of that. As you can see, I don't remember what your numbers were off the top of my head, but according to my research, in the last decade, attention span has decreased from about 12 seconds of laser focus attention to about 8 on average for a human. And that's 100% due to the present technology. I mean, if you think about it, every single college kid, when they're doing homework or something like that, they have their phone near them, and a lot of times they just almost out of second nature just find themselves kind of picking it up, and it feels like 2 minutes, and then they're on it for an hour, and they look at the clock and they're just like, oh well, crap, it's midnight and I have to study for this test tomorrow morning, I have to finish this paper. So stuff like that, it definitely hurts your attention, and it makes it harder for us to focus on something because we need to be constantly connected, kind of like what Zuckerberg was saying in the first clip of this video. The world craves connection. We need to be connected to people. We need to see what other people are doing. We need to let people know what we're doing. And I also put together another little skit kind of demonstrating this fact. So here's the second skit. So obviously this skit kind of makes it a little bit more exaggerated and kind of just going more for comic value. But it is true. I know for me, when I really need to focus and do homework or do some work, for example, me doing 8 weeks worth of homework for this class in 3 days, I needed to put my phone on Do Not Disturb and kind of put it on the other side of the room. So I could be laser focused on doing the work I needed to do, because I know if I have it next to me and the notifications are on, at least when it goes off, I'm going to at least look at it. And then if it's something that I want to kind of look more into, or if it's someone trying to get a hold of me, I'm going to pick it up and respond. And then that just creates the whole rabbit hole of you'll probably be on for 20 minutes, because that's just kind of how things go. So yeah, like I said, this is a comic kind of thing, but it's still definitely relevant. So another possible problem that overuse of social media and technology can cause is mental issues. And obviously today, mental health and treatment of mental health is something that is really on the rise. It's something that a lot of people are pushing for. A lot of people are trying to get recognition for, to make it easy to get treated, and something that is easily you can talk about it with other people easily, because that's where you need to do. You need to talk about it with people. So one thing that social media can cause is social anxiety. So this obviously is kind of a little bit what we've been talking about the whole time, but it's kind of almost like you're afraid to talk to someone. And when you're put in a social situation, you get a lot of anxiety. As you can see by this this graphic, about 40 million people in the United States suffer from some sort of anxiety disorder, and that's 20% of the U.S. population. So if you think about it like that, that's a ton of people, and that's why the mental illness is getting kind of championed so hard, is because there's a lot of people that deal with these problems. Yes, and part of some of that anxiety problems falls into the social category. But also another kind of example of how mental illness kind of could be caused by social media is the pandemic. You know, during the pandemic, we saw depression and other types of mental problems really rise. That became a real problem, and obviously part of that was because people were stuck in their houses; they couldn't go outside. But they all had social media, so they all had that instant connectivity to all their friends. So technically speaking, they could still interact with their friends the same amount. They just wouldn't be in person. But this kind of goes to show that just relying solely on social media to communicate with people is not the way to go about it. Obviously, there's good things about it. It's a great way to keep in touch with people. Social media is great. I'm not saying that it's not. But if we solely rely on that, and that's our primary use of communication, that could cause serious problems, as we've outlined throughout this whole video. So, like Jane Lanier said, we're not anti-technology. We're just pro-human. We need to make our world a place where the human people can thrive and not have to deal with these types of problems. And like I said, while social media is great, it has its hand in causing some of these serious problems. So in conclusion, how do we deal with this? How do we avoid this? How do we avoid this dark rabbit hole that we're kind of falling into by becoming dependent on technology and social media for communication and other things? The answer is balance. With anything in life, you need balance. Too much of anything is not good for you, and the same goes with social media and technology. So try to find ways to reduce your screen time. Try to have more conversations in person. When you're maybe friends in town, instead of just kind of texting them, go and see them, that kind of thing. Try to find opportunities to interact with people in person, in the flesh. As the whole class said on the last day of class, when you asked to put a favorite childhood memory, the heavy majority of them were memories that were in person. So obviously we still have all of our fondest memories are in person. So we gotta continue to be like that, because that's what's going to keep us healthy. That's what's going to keep us going in the right direction. But yeah, so really that's what it comes down to, balance. You got to go outside, you got to touch some grass. If you're staying inside all day, we've seen through quarantine that that's just not good for you. You got to go outside, you got to interact with people, you have to use your social skills to get to know people and have fun in the world, and that's basically what it comes down to. So at the end of the day, reduce your screen time. That's the number one thing. Get off of social media, go touch some grass.